welcome back to the EV Life podcast. I'm Crystal.
I'm Hannah Neal.
And we have a really great episode today. It's a little bit of a myth-busting episode, I guess.
Yeah, today we speak with Tim Burrows of the EV Society, and he shares a little bit about EV battery fires and, share some stats and information that will be hopefully helpful to you, because it is something that comes up in concerns and even in our EV Life community and in the news. And so we just wanted to shed some light into what the reality is for that.
Yeah, I actually learned quite a lot from Tim, so I hope you'll enjoy this episode. And just a reminder, if you have thoughts on this week's interview or any of our interviews from this season or previous seasons, you can share those with us in the EV Life group on the AMA mobile app. We're always looking forward to connecting with our listeners. So I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Tim Burrows, and we look forward to chatting with you in the group. Hi, Tim. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely my pleasure, Crystal. I'm glad to be here.
So I'm really excited for this conversation because we're going to be talking about a concern that we hear quite a bit, and that's battery fires as it pertains to electric vehicles. But before we get started, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name's Tim Burrows. I'm with an organization called Electric Vehicle Society, which is a national organization that supports electrification of transportation. And we do have members right across Canada. And primarily we work on helping people understand the benefits of electric vehicles. And also we do from time to time lobby government on policy. So we're busy.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, you all do a lot of awareness initiatives. So, to bring people, I guess, the best information around electric vehicles. And something that has, I think, become a bit of a concern are EV battery fires. So are you able to shed some insight into how common this actually is and how it compares to fires in ICE vehicles?
Sure. So there are a number of different reports, but they all point in the same direction, tiny variations in the numbers. But basically, what we find is that battery electric vehicles, that's full plug-in, no hybrid, no ICE engine in it, battery electric vehicles actually have the lowest rate of fires. And their rates are somewhere around 25 fires per every 100,000 electric vehicles sold. So I think that works out to 0.0012% annually. Now that compares, so that's 25 fires per 100,000. Gasoline cars, on the other hand, have fires at the rate of more than 1,500 per 100,000 sold. And those fires are primarily due to mechanical failures or fuel leaks or electrical shorts, that sort of thing. So in fact, full battery electric are extremely safe with regard to catching fire.
That's really interesting. Do you think that there is a perception that there are more fires with electric vehicles than there actually are? And why do you think that is?
Yeah, I do. I think that certainly among folks who aren't familiar with EVs, those of us who are in the EV space and have been living with them for years now totally understand the dynamic. But I think for people on the fringe, people sort of looking at it and thinking about it, and they've heard stories and probably seen news reports. And I think, and I don't like to blame the media for things, but I do think that the media has hyped car fires, electric car fires, and probably put a fear into people. It's true that EVs don't catch fire very often at all. Mm-hmm. It's extremely rare. When they do, they are difficult to put out, and they make great headlines and great media stories.
Can you shed a little bit of insight into why? So you said when they do, catch on fire, they are more difficult to put out, and why is that?
Yeah, so the batteries that have been used in most electric vehicles up until recent days, the last few years anyway, have been lithium nickel batteries. which are, and they use a liquid electrolyte inside that is quite flammable. And so, of course, the battery packs themselves have been built to be very sturdy. They're almost in bulletproof containers, so they're safe that way. But if something does happen that penetrates it or otherwise causes it to ignite, we experience something that you've probably heard of called thermal runaway.
Mm-hmm.
And they're one cell. These battery packs contain thousands of little batteries, and they're compartmentalized so that they're safe and there's fire breaks. But it's possible, very rarely, that one of those things ignites, and then it ignites the cell beside it, which ignites the cell beside that, and
Right.
it takes off. And these things don't need oxygen to burn, outside oxygen, so they're tough to put out.
Mm-hmm.
And they do put up a battle.
Do you know what are some of the causes for these fires? Is there a leading cause for some of these battery fires?
Yeah, it's pretty rare. Again, the occurrence of this is so rare. But when it happens, it's often, or it will be in the situation where maybe a car was driving at a crazy high speed and then hit a cement wall. I mean, it takes something pretty extreme
Right.
to set one of these things off. It's pretty rare that they're just sitting at parked and, suddenly spontaneously catch. There were a few stories too, which may have led to this kind of misunderstanding coming from a few vehicle manufacturers, particularly in the early days that produced batteries that were faulty. And they became aware that there was a higher than usual fire risk with those. Pretty isolated, again, small, not very many occurrences. But that get in the media and then people hear it and that's what they remember.
Right. And so, you have pointed out that the occurrence of battery fires in EVs is quite small. And it sounds like from what you just described, there is a lot being done to ensure that there are minimal fires just with the way that they're manufactured. But it is a big concern. And are manufacturers continuing to take measures to reduce the amount of fires, even though, like you said, it is quite minimal to begin?
Yeah, well, I mentioned that the initial batteries that were used were all these nickel based batteries, and NMC is the name. But we've seen more and more batteries coming out that are being produced with iron. So LFP or iron phosphate batteries have become very, very common. On the best-selling cars, they tend to be the batteries that are used, and the iron batteries come with an even more remote chance of ignition. They won't light on fire or catch on fire until they get to a much higher temperature than the nickel batteries did. And that's not all. That's not where it ends, because we're also seeing other types of batteries on the horizon. We've been waiting. The holy grail, of course, is solid state batteries. And in those batteries, liquid electrolyte isn't liquid, it's a solid. And as a result, they are pretty much impossible to burn. And even sodium batteries are on the horizon, right? So sodium batteries likewise are very difficult, or if not impossible to burn. So manufacturers are busy, and we're seeing a lot of changes in this technology that, among other benefits, will even reduce the likelihood of fires further.
Yeah. So I guess aside from the perception that these fires are more common than they maybe actually are there any other misconceptions around, fires related to electric vehicles that you're aware of?
Well, the one sort of interesting twist in all of this, and I don't know if it's a cause of misunderstanding, but I mentioned, of course, gas cars are most likely ones to be involved in fires, and full battery electric are the least likely to catch on fire. But there actually is one type of engine or power plant that could catch on fire slightly more often than even gas, and that is hybrid vehicles.
Oh.
Plug-in hybrids have a slightly higher rate of ignition. So, yeah, that might, we hear about car fires, and often if you're you do hear about one. It's interesting to explore whether that was a hybrid vehicle or a full battery electric.
And do you know why it's slightly higher in hybrids?
I think two reasons. One is, remember, now you are carrying a tank full of flammable liquid because it's a hybrid, so you have gas in the back. And it's a more complicated powertrain. So it's got to work now with two different sources, electricity and gasoline, and switch back and forth efficiently and do all that stuff that needs to happen. And I think as a result of all that, electrical ignition is perhaps a source. But I do want to stress that, hybrid vehicles that the likelihood of fires, even among hybrid vehicles, is extremely remote.
Right. So, this was quite an insightful conversation, but, that fear does exist. And so for our listeners, are there things that EV owners can do to reduce the risk of battery fires?
Gosh, I can't think of anything that the owner per se needs to do. Obviously, if any kind of physical damage does take place to your vehicle, if you're involved in an accident and you drive an electric vehicle, just as you would with a gasoline vehicle, it would be good to get it checked out. Yeah. Make sure that there's no physical damage to the vehicle. If you're taking your electric car in for a regular service, things like tire changes and so on, it's become pretty common now. Certainly, I've been driving EVs for a long time. Early days, I was a little hesitant about taking it in for tire swaps, in the spring, because wanted to make sure that the shop that you use is experienced with electric vehicles. They know where the lift points are. Right. You don't want to have somebody put something on the battery and try and lift the car from there. So, make sure you're servicing the car when it's logical and proper to do it. Make sure that you're using a shop that's familiar with electric vehicles, if not the original dealer. I think those are the kind of the key things you can do.
So what I'm hearing from you is, if you drive an ICE vehicle and you're not particularly concerned about the car catching on fire, then you don't really have much cause to be concerned for your EV catching on fire either.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and kind of sharing this information. I think it is really important because, as you said, there does seem to be a perception that electric vehicles maybe catch on fire a little bit more frequently than ICE vehicles. And so this was great for our audience. Thanks so much, Tim.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the EV Life podcast. Make sure that you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And if you'd like to join the conversation, you can always do so in the EV Life group on the AMA mobile app. We'll talk to you in the next episode.